Yeah, now I can also see that it is being recorded. Okay, I will be thankful to you if you can then also send the link of recorded lecture to me.
Sure, I'll do it right away after the lecture.
Okay, it's not necessary, but if it is possible.
Sure, of course, no problem, Sasha.
Okay.
Okay, we can start in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Almost time. Sasha, it's time.
Okay.
I think we should kick off.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, let me say a few things first. Okay, let me welcome everyone, students, colleagues. Good afternoon and welcome. So, as part of our collaboration with the University of Primorska in Slovenia, we have a guest speaker today with us, Saša Planinc, and we're meeting for a lecture on QR codes. As you observe too, from around, QR codes are everywhere. We see them often. To illustrate, for instance, we see them at table cafes, right? We just scan them to be able to see the menu. We use QR codes when doing money transactions, drawing cash out of an ATM, or maybe doing a Swift transaction. They are everywhere, and they're being used for a variety of purposes. In Sasha's words, QR codes are one of the barcodes that have considerable potential in tourism. And nowadays, they're already largely present in the field of tourism industry. So this lecture will focus simply on a couple of technical and practical details concerning QR codes, including, for instance, as Sasha puts it, the evolution of barcodes, characteristics and limitations of QR codes in general, and types of contents in QR codes. Sasha has also tailored his lecture in a way to fit it into what we are and what we'll be dealing with in our class. So in this respect, he will also be telling us about the use of QR codes with reference to cultural venues, for instance, namely art galleries, museums, cultural and touristic attractions, and also tourist portals and walking trails. Let me also give you a brief introduction about Saša Planinc. He's now a senior lecturer at the University of Primorska, Faculty of Tourism Studies, known as Turistika shortly. Basically, he teaches courses on information science and information communication technologies. Occasionally, he's also involved in teaching on catering and hospitality industry, statistics, and methodology. Interesting to note, okay, for the audience, that on the back of his career and duties in information communication technologies, he has a bachelor degree in culinary heritage. So without further ado, I thank Saša on behalf of my faculty and students for taking up our offer of a seminar. Saša, we are extremely pleased to have you with us today. Before I pass it on to him, I'm also gently reminding you that this will be approximately 50 minutes lecture, and it will be followed by a 10 to 15 minutes questions and discussion session. Please make sure you turn off your microphones as our guest lectures speaks. He lectures, please. Thank you. Saša, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Dinc Sarac. It is a great honor to be your guest. I'm not often a guest on such occasions, so the theme which I have selected, or we selected together, it's one which is very interesting for me. I usually, when I'm tourist or when I'm traveling, I'm curious about what I will find in QR codes. And it is not always that you can find something useful. And that's why this topic is so interesting for me. I hope that you can already see my presentation. If you can confirm this, please.
We do see it.
Okay, very good. In this lecture, if you have possibility and if you want, you can interrupt me anytime with your questions already before the discussion session at the end. And you are also very much invited to try some things if you want, because I will show you a few QR code generators and applications. So during the lecture, you can try to use them, maybe to install some mobile application on your phone and something similar. So I will be happy to hear your feedback, comments, what do you think? But first I will show you my presentation as mentioned. So for the first maybe 2 minutes, I would like also to present my faculty and my university. Professor Sarac already told you that I'm coming from Slovenia. Our university is relatively young university. It was established in 2003, and we don't have a lot of members, faculties. In this slide, you can see which we have, and one of them is Faculty of Tourism Studies, Turistika. We are located in Portorož. This is one tourist town near the coast. We are close to the Adriatic Sea. Maybe I can just show you to have an idea, where we are. So we are located here. And this part, big part, is called Istria, which is not all our country. We are neighbors of Croatia. So this central part is Slovenia with capital city Ljubljana. Koper is here at the right, okay? And we are here at one peninsula Piran Peninsula. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can see where we are in relation to your country. Okay, so we are quite small university. You can see that we have a quite decent number of foreign students also, international students. And our faculty, which is in Porto Roche, it's focusing on tourism. And we have study programs on all three levels. Undergraduate, we have a few study programs on undergraduate or bachelor level, and then also master and doctoral. If you want, you can also visit us via some Erasmus exchange or something like that. We are now also cooperating with you. You are our partner. And I put the links if you and students want to see more about these possibilities of exchange. The presentation it's available to you. Your professor will give you a link to the presentation. So if I start firstly with a bigger topic, which is barcodes in general, inside which we have also QR codes. QR codes are not very young invention, but still they are second generation of barcodes. So if we look at what are the main advantages of barcodes, why they are invented barcodes, we can answer that it is mostly because with scanning barcodes, we get the data, which is inside codes, very fast, very accurate, quite in a simple way. And some barcodes have also integrated built-in redundancy, which gives them possibility to scan them even if you have some damage on them and something like that. So the two generations of barcodes are first generation, which is called linear barcodes. They are one-dimensional, and they were invented already in 1970, and they are very much used also today. I will talk a little bit about this generation of barcodes in a while. And the second generation was when they have found that the capacity of data, which is in barcodes, it's not really big, so you cannot put a lot of numbers or letters in one-dimensional QR codes. So that's why they have searched for other options, and they have invented two-dimensional barcodes, which are called metric codes. QR code is only one of them, as you will see. So if I start with linear barcodes, which are still very much used, they're capable of storing only smaller amount of data. That means few numbers. Usually, it could be also other characters, but usually we have numbers in such barcodes. And initially, they were scanned by some special devices which were created just for that purpose, not as today when we are using our mobile phones for scanning all sorts of barcodes. So there were special scanners and the readers, and they are still using them because they are very useful in, for example, in stores, in libraries. It is easier and faster if you have one such fixed scanner in your table. It is faster to work like in this way. We can see two examples here in this presentation. They are of different standard. So there is not only one standard for linear barcodes, there are several. This EAN, it's quite used in Europe. UPC, I think it is more oriented to Americas. And one important thing to understand is that when you scan such linear barcodes, it is not very important when you scan them with the laser, because the information which is available in such code, it's it's everywhere. Okay, so if you scan it on the top or in the bottom, you get the same information. Okay, the high of the code, it's such because it is easier if you have more space and you easily scan with the scanner, with the laser. But otherwise, the information is the same everywhere that you scan. Often, such barcodes have also the number shown close to the code. Why is that? Simply because if you have a problem with scanning such a barcode, you can type the numbers which are written below the code. So it is a little bit time consuming, but still, if you have big problems with scanning, you can do it that way. Okay. So as I told you, they are irreplaceable in the stores, in the libraries. You can find them there. So that was the first generation. And then they have invented metric barcodes, which can contain much more data, because now we have 2 dimensions in which we can store the data. So in this case, we get squares, dots, okay? And such codes can carry few thousand characters, which is much more than in first generation. And this was very important because, especially in tourism, we tell stories, we have something to tell to tourists about attractions, about tourism services, and so on. So in this case, it was important that you can put quite a lot of data in one barcode. And when you scan such code, you get quite a lot of data on your device. In case of matrix barcodes, it is very usual that you have not only numbers, but mostly characters, also special characters, and also some special versions like kanji and I don't know, those Chinese and Japanese letters. Okay, so you can put all of this in such codes. Because they were invented quite late, when we already used mobile phones, it was natural that our mobile phones, smartphones, tablets, and other devices, they were important to be able to scan such codes to get the information, which was not the case with first generation. Okay, but in this second generation, it is natural that you scan such a code with your smartphone, but still there are some dedicated devices, special devices like handy scanners and terminals and something like that, which can help you with reading such codes. But mostly we are using, as a tourist, we are using smartphones, which have to be equipped with camera, of course, and it is not so, or otherwise, it is important that the camera is of good quality, that you get good picture, because it is important for reading the code. So the first thing which we need on our devices, it's a camera, and the second thing is one appropriate application which is capable of reading such codes. It is very often today that already the camera application on the phone is able to scan QR codes, but if you don't have such possibility, there are also a lot of free applications for scanning QR codes, QR and other metric codes. Because we have two dimensions, as you can see in these examples below, it is important to scan entire code. So it is not enough to scan it only on the top or in the bottom or somewhere else, but it is very much important that you scan entire code, and only in this case the code will be successfully read, and you can get the data out from it. In case of metric barcodes, you can see that there is no additional information close to them, so you don't have some numbers or links or something else which is encoded in the codes, because the capacity of data could be big. So you cannot put everything close to such QR code if there are a few thousand characters in such code. It is of course possible, but it takes a lot of place. So we can see that we have different standards also in this generation of QR codes. And I've shown here the three of most common types or standards which are used. First, QR code, the second one, Aztec code, and the last one, data matrix. And I hope that you can see already from the appearance of that code that they're a little bit different. If you will have possibility to see more more matrix codes, you can see that the pattern of one standard is very much visible. So you can see already from the picture of that QR code or Aztec code or data matrix of which type it is. We will see a little bit in deep for QR code what is the main structure of such code. So those who know which type of QR code it's shown, they can select appropriate application for scanning, but it is very often that we have applications which are capable of scanning different types of codes, not only metric codes, but also previous version of linear codes. And because these metric codes were possible to carry a lot of data, they were becoming very interesting not only for tourism. Tourism is one of the possible uses, but in many other fields. They were firstly used maybe in manufacturing and so on, and tracing products and something like that. But today they are very much used in marketing, advertising especially, ticketing, transport, and so on. And now let's go to see what are specific characteristics of QR codes about which I will talk today. QR codes are acronym for quick response codes. That means when we scan them, we quickly get the information which is stored in the code. They were invented in Japan. One company of Toyota, or they are at least cooperating with Toyota, has invented them for tracing products. Okay, they didn't think about other possible uses of such codes. So this was the beginning. If you want, you can visit their official website of this inventor, DensoWave. It is company. They have quite good explanations, and you can read also the history of QR codes there, which is quite interesting. Why QR codes are so successful? One of the things is that they have become also an ISO standard. I hope that you have heard for International Standard Organization before, ISO. They are making standards for whatever you want. One of things are also QR codes. So if they are becoming ISO standard, that means they were found as something very important. And after that, the use of QR codes exponentially has grown. And now not only Japan and China and other countries are using them quite often, but also in all other countries. You can find numerous free online generators of such QR codes. The important thing is that they're free, so you can use these generators free. You can create QR codes free. You can use them freely, so you can put them on your brochures, on your T-shirts, everywhere you want. So it is becoming very handy to use such online generators. And you can find also online decoders. If you don't have, for example, a smartphone, it is enough to have one camera. You make picture of QR code, and later you upload it to such decoders, and you can find the content of the code using such decoders. Apart of that, we have also quite a lot of mobile applications which are capable not only of scanning and reading the content from the QR codes, but also creating QR codes, which is important because you can have some interesting data on your smartphone, and you want to share it with your colleague, somebody else, and you have possibility to create a QR code from that data, and give possibility to other user to scan QR code from your phone and to get the data. It is, of course, one of the possible solutions. You can send files via Bluetooth and something like that, but this is also one of possible uses of QR codes. Here on these numbers, which you can see on this presentation, there are few examples of such online generators. I will click on one of them, or maybe two, to show you how easy it to use them. Usually you have possibility to select the type of the code, and then the type of your content which you will store in your code. You enter all the data, all the specifications, and then you can create a code, which is then simple picture which you can download to your computer and use it everywhere you want, in the paper, in the documents, you can print them in the brochure, you can put it everywhere you want. Okay, so this is one example, and maybe I can show you another one. They are different in some aspects. I will talk about this a little bit later. because not everyone gives you all the possibilities to define QR codes. So you can find the right one for your needs. This one is, for example, very simple and easy to use. You can see that you can select first the data type, and then you continue with content. And on the right side, you can already see in this one the preview of your QR code. I will probably go back to one of them later. In case of QR codes, the capacity of the characters which can be stored in the code depends on type of the characters. If you have only numbers or numeric characters, you can put more than 7,000 characters in such code. But if you have alphanumeric characters, that means letters and numbers, then you can store about 4,000 characters in such code. But later in recommendations how to use QR codes, you will see that I will recommend to you not to fully use this possibility, because such QR codes are quite hard to read with scanners. So there can be reading problems, which are very important, because if your tourists cannot scan the code, then it has no value for them. So let's see what is the structure of QR code, because it is important to know the rules when you use QR codes. You will see that it is possible also to break all those rules, to make some exceptions. You make some things different as they are expected. But in this case, there could be problems with scanning. So if we look at the basic structure, we can see the first thing all around, we have so-called quiet zone, margin, edge. This one is very important, because when you scan such codes, it is important that your camera and application on your mobile phone, it is able to find where the code is. And if you have such margin, then this is much easier. The second thing which we can see is that the main part is structured from those squares, those dots, which could be usually they're white or black, and they are holders of the data which is encoded in the QR code. But then we have also some special, let's say, reference points in this structure. You can see 3 bigger squares and 1 smaller. They're very important that application, which decodes the content from the QR code, can orient the code in a right way. The first thing is that from those points, the application knows that this type of QR code is, this type of metric code is QR code. And then with help of this alignment square, it can also rotate the picture, and then it can decode the content from the QR code. So these are all very important things which are necessary to use in QR code generators. But we as users usually just use such generators, and we hope that these generators are creating QR codes which are made according to all standards, or at least that we are noticed when these standards are broken, they're not used, okay? And another thing which is important to know, when you create QR codes, it is important to know in advance that you also have one possibility to, let's say, encode the data not only once in a QR code, but you can put additional, let's say, spare squares which are there in case if the QR code was damaged or it is if one part is hidden or something like that. Even in such cases, with help of error correction, which is integrated in QR codes, you can get all the data from the QR code. So in this picture, which you can see here, you can see one motorcycle in front of those squares. But still, if you scan such QR code, you will still get all the content which is coded into the code. And this level could be different from 7% till 30%. And when you create QR codes, it is important to think where you will put such QR code. If you will put it into one brochure, it is probably not very important how much error correction do you integrate. But if you have one QR code outdoor, near one tourism attraction, which is in the natural park or I don't know where you don't have possibility to preserve the QR code to all the weather conditions and something like that, then it is good to think to have bigger error correction level into the code. Okay, it is also possible in this case to put some beautiful pictures, like in this case, on the QR code, and it is it is nicer to see such code than totally black and white. Okay, and now let's see what subtypes of QR codes also exist. They are not QR codes, but one version or special type. The picture which I am showing you is showing the next generation, let's say, new attempt to put more data in codes. In case if you have different color of squares, that means additional possibilities, much bigger number of combinations, and that gives you more data which you can store in such codes. But there are also some other versions, for example, frame QR, which has one part of the QR code in the center, which is there for the purpose that you can put image in there. So this is not the same as error correction. You can use both of them. So in this case, you get one clear area and you can put a picture in it. And maybe another one interesting type is SQRC, which is secure QR code. It is something that can be used for identifying people or products and similar, and for authentication, because you can store, let's say, public content in such QR code, and beside that, you can integrate also one part which is hidden, and it is of a private, it's one private information which is available only to those who have special scanners, special devices, which are capable of decoding such encrypted data. Also in tourism, it is very important because nowadays we want to get identity of people and some other data, which could be important also in these times of COVID crisis. So it is something which is very much, let's say, actual. Okay. So let's go on to see maybe the most important thing in this lecture: which types of content can we put in QR codes? From the slide, you can see that we have 3 types of such content. I divided it in 3 categories regarding the need of some connection to network. The first one, it's category for the content which needs internet access. So in case of a web page, if you get one URL into QR code, in this case, you need access to the network. Otherwise, you cannot get anything from this QR code. You can see the link, but usually you want to see the web page which is behind that link. The same is with geolocation. If you are using, for example, Google Map, you can, those who know that behind that we have coordinates, you can type or coordinates or put link to the Google Map in such QR code. And again, if you want to see such location, you need some system which show you a map, and on that map you can see that location. Very useful in tourism because tourists are coming to the destinations and they want to see where some attraction is or to use some walking paths. About those I will talk a little bit later. And then you have also other content which needs internet connection. Okay. The second category needs connection to the cellular network or mobile phone network to use them. So you can put phone number, or you can already prepare SMS in QR code. And if somebody scans such QR code, then needs the connection to the mobile phone network that he or she can call or send SMS. But the most important thing here is that we have also some content which doesn't need any connection to the internet or to phone networks. And this is something which I want to tell you, to think about it, because in tourism, we will see that we don't have always connection to the internet. If we are tourists, we go to some natural parks or caves and something like that. We don't have a possibility to connect, or it is expensive expensive roaming. So tourists don't want to go to the internet because they have to pay for it. So, in some cases. In such cases, it is very important to know that there are types of content which can be used totally offline. And such types are usual plain text, that means regular text, which can be also a few thousand characters long. Business cards, so you can put all the data of you or your company in your visit card, and then somebody who scans such QR code get possibility to save contact in a smartphone. Okay, and in this case you can get quite a lot of data with one scan. And then in tourism, also very important, events. We often see some information boards or posters or something like that with announcing of some events, concert, exhibitions, and so on. if we put QR codes with event close to each one, somebody who is tourist can make individual program with scanning some QR codes on such information board, and the information about the event will be entered into the smartphone's not calculator but calendar. Okay, so you can get all the events in the calendar, and again it is done totally offline. So you can get the information about location, time, and description of the events. Maybe it is important also to understand that everything which we put into the QR codes could be in a form of static content or dynamic content. If we have static content, that means that we integrate the exact value into the QR code. It could be also a link. But in case of dynamic content, we have some link in the QR code, which is intermediate page on which we have a redirection to another page. This is quite important when you think about QR codes which are on some locations where it is expensive to change the QR code, or you have to put to print another brochure or something like that. In this case, it is nice to use such dynamic codes because you can later change the destination website. Okay, so landing web page. Okay, so the URL which is in the QR code, it's always the same, but it can redirect you to some other website if you change this in this so-called intermediate web page. And now about recommendations. For better code readability, it is quite important to follow standards, to make dark color on light background, okay, dark squares on light background, and to have a margin. Then it is nice. It is good to have only one color of such squares in the QR code, but you can also make things differently. You can disregard these rules, but in this case, it is very important to test this QR code with as many as possible devices and applications. So there are, of course, possibilities to make some special and good-looking QR codes, but it is needed to test them to see if everything will work fine. Next thing, which is important as a recommendation, is not to put too much data into the QR code. Maybe I can show you, or I can show you later if there will be time. If you put a lot of data in QR code, you get a lot of small squares, and in this case, such QR codes are hard to read. So it is better to put a little bit less data and then combine it with a link. So if you put one QR code in front of one interesting historic building, the first thing which is good is to put the plain text inside the QR code that everyone, also if they don't have access to the internet, can already get at least some information. And you don't want to put too much text inside, so you can add link in such text. So if somebody wants, and if he or she has access to the internet, can click on link and see all other details about that historical building. Okay. Then it is also important in at least for some users to give at least some explanation about how to read the content from QR code, even if they're here already a long time, but still some users don't know how to use such QR codes. Then it is also important to have alternatives. If you put one QR code in front of historical building or one old tree, which is very important, or something like that, it is not a good idea to put only QR code, because some users don't know how to use them, some of them don't have mobile phones with them, so you want to put maybe one small info table with text, and on QR code you can maybe give additional explanation, which is on the internet, or you can put link to the video about that historical building or something like that. Okay, so you should combine, you don't put only QR code, and you don't put too much QR codes also, but you always combine it with text, with pictures, and so on. Then the next thing is, when you think about creating QR codes, it is important to think from the eyes of tourists, what they will expect, what they need. So don't create QR codes just for fun or because you want to show that you all also have QR codes, but think as a tourist and create some meaningful content, some meaningful QR codes, which will simplify the capturing of the data and which will speed the process, so that tourists will get the information very fast. It is also important to adjust websites which will open to small screens. That's called responsive design. But nowadays, most web pages, I think, they are already capable of resizing to small screens. It is also important to think about possible abuses of QR codes. So if you put one QR code in front of building, somebody can put something on the top, one sticker with new QR code, which could have one URL which is malicious, which will take you to one malicious website, and you can have problems with that. So one practical possibility to solve this is to put one glass in front of the QR code, and then if somebody will stick something on it, you can see it quite good, so you can think that maybe something's wrong with that QR code. Okay, so you can make protection for QR codes. And now let's see how we can use QR codes in tourism. I hope I still have at least 5 minutes. And I will...
you do have 5 minutes.
Okay, very good.
Wow.
So in tourism, we usually can see that QR codes are used for promotion, which is only one possibility. Okay, so promotion with some URLs to which will take you to one website. It's of course possible to do. It has meaning, okay, but maybe when you have very long URLs. In this case, such QR code is very helpful. You don't have to type everything, you just scan it, okay? And you don't make mistakes. But let's see other possibilities. We can use QR codes also for informing tourists, especially when they come to the destination, but also before. So we can have information boards, printed materials, descriptions beside attractions, in museum exhibitions. You can have them on menus that you can select dishes, and so on. The next thing is signalization. or orientation on the destination, so that you put the location of some attraction in QR code. So when somebody scan it, can see on the map where it is located. In connection with that, I would like to name one special file type, which is called GPX, which can carry the geolocation data. It is one file in which you can store one walking path, walking trail, or something like that. And if you have one such file, tourists can download it to their mobile phones, and they can follow the track which you have planned. Okay, I will show you one example. It is one example from our municipality here in Piran. Let me see. Now it will open. So that's one tourism portal for tourists in our municipality. We can see also the map for this area, okay? And they are preparing also brochures. In these brochures, they are using QR codes. Maybe it is not important to show you, but in the brochure you have several QR codes, and when you scan them, you come to this map portal, in which you can select several walking paths. And what is the good practice? Beside that you can see this route on the map, you can also download it as a GPX file, which can be used with special applications on mobile phones, and you can have it with you when you go around. And if you turn on location, then you can see if you are on the right way or not. Okay. Then in tourism, you can often make rationalizations and improvements in processes. So if you use QR codes for individual self-check-in in hotel, you don't need so much employee. Also in tourism information centers, if there is very crowded with tourists, you can put some QR codes that tourists can get information. Also in situations where you don't have people, so you have one attraction, but there is nobody else near it. So you can put QR code, and at least some information will be available to tourists. Then, as also Professor Sarach mentioned, you can use QR codes for mobile ticketing, for paying, for coupons and something like that, to make more out of our information, which is stored maybe in some systems which we have to use, and QR code is connection to those systems. Okay. And one thing which I want to mention for the end is that we can use QR codes with special URLs in which you have so-called UTM parameters, which are meant for marketing campaigns. So if you are using such links, such URLs, you can track where one QR code was scanned, especially if it is fixed on the wall or somewhere else. Then you know when it was scanned, sometimes who was scanning the QR code. So you get a lot of analytical data, which you can analyze later to see what is working and what is not working, which campaign is better than other, which brochure is better than other, and so on. You have links on these numbers here, if you will want to read more about that later. And the last slide is about examples which our students have prepared when we are working together in previous years. And between them, you can find, for example, also such origami rows. Here we in Portorož have quite a lot of roses in our town, because it is called Porto Rose, that means port of roses. Okay, so students have invented such origami roses with QR codes for special some providers which are here in our community. Then they have also think about menus in which you don't get only possibility to order one item, but also to get information about nutritional value and energy. Okay, and maybe also one link to video how this dish is prepared, and so on. So I would like to stop here, and we can have a discussion because I have few pictures here showing the use of QR codes, and we can discuss if they were used in good way or not. So if you find some problems, if you have some suggestions how to change it, and so on. So I will go back to those pictures if you will agree. And for the last slide, I have prepared also invitation for you. So you are very much invited to come also here in Portorož for exchange. And thank you for your attention. And please, as it is written here, promise that you will be using QR codes in tourism in a meaningful way. I hope. I open the discussion, so all questions are welcome, and I will show you also a few pictures of QR codes used in tourism.
Saša, thank you. This was very interesting, and I enjoyed it really. I've learned a lot of things. Okay, it seems we have 10 minutes for questions. And let me ask the audience, and you can take it from there. Are there any questions for Saša?
I can see one.
Okay, Eblaja.
Hello, first of all, thank you so much. I thought that, by the way, I hear my sound back. Would you just maybe stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, I can stop sharing.
Maybe it can help.
Maybe, but I'm not sure if this will help.
Okay, it helped.
Very good.
I guess, okay. So thank you so much. I thought I knew QR codes at least a little bit. Now I see that it's beyond my imagination. I mean, there are so many ways to use it. And I have a real basic question. I hope that you're not just surprised with it. My question is, okay, there are so many generators as you shared different websites. So let's say I have a website link and I use two different generators to create a QR code. Are they identical? I mean, are there any overlappings between the codes?
Yeah, good question. Not every generator will give you the same code, but when you will scan it, the content will be the same. Okay, but it is important to test them because probably not all are good. Okay, so if you will use, for example, the generator of TensorWave, which is the inventor of QR codes, then it will be according to all standards. Maybe it will not be so fancy and something like that, but you will have one QR code which will be very much readable, okay, but by all devices, all applications. So when you use different generators, you can select them according some limitations of them, because some of them will not give you opportunity to change the level of error correction. Some others will not give you opportunity to encode, for example, geolocation. Okay, and there could be other limitations. Maybe you cannot store dynamic content. Okay, because behind those dynamic links, you always have one other system, and you depend on it. So if you want to change the link, which is on one intermediate website, and if this intermediate website is disappearing, then your QR code has no value, because you will not get what you expect. Okay, so but it is always important to start from what do you need, or what your tourists need. So it is very important to make some solution for the target audience. Okay, so there are some special, let's say, fancy QR code generators, which offers you opportunity to make really beautiful QR codes, because QR codes in general are not very nice, because you have those white and black dots, but you can use not only squares, but also circles or other forms in different colors. You can have pictures inside and something like that. So I strongly suggest to use them, because they're much more attractive for tourists. But very important, you should always test and test and test.
So in perfect circumstances, the link doesn't disappear, it stays forever, and there is no overlapping.
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. If I understand you correctly, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
More questions? I have one.
Please.
Saša, you've been telling us about, just the consumer side. And I mean, what is your impression so far? I mean, you've said you and your groups of students have been, working on this, just creating QR codes for certain things about the territory. Slovenia, Porto Rosa. How about the consumer side? Does everyone find it practical to use it?
You mean tourists?
Yes.
It depends if they know how to use them. And what is important for me is we, as developers of QR codes, are those who can make good or bad practices. So if we create QR codes which are not interesting, I will share you again screen a little bit, and I will show you one such case. In this case, we have three information tables in front of some attractions, and these three are very much close one to each other. But on all of three, they put the same QR code. It has no meaning if you put always the same QR code, because the text which are here are different. The content which they want to show, this is used for some big pictures on which there is a story about Tartini, which was very known violinist here in our region. And you can put links to three or more different websites rather than the same site. Because if tourists will go and scan the first one, and then on the second one, he or she will see that there is the same link, it has no sense. Stupid use. Okay, so it is better to make something more interesting than them. Okay, so for me it is very much important that we create meaningful QR codes. I'm not sure if I have answers to you, so maybe you can ask.
No, definitely. I was curious about what you were going to say. I mean, you've already mentioned that it's ideal to use less text, but provide links to certain things, websites, in a way creating variety, through the use of QR codes. And I just wanted to hear from you about how things work.
Yeah, and tourists will use them if they will know how to use them, and if there will be something interesting. If they will find just one short link and there you will find only some general information about the place, maybe it is not important. But if they will find some very detailed information close to one tourist attraction, then it has a big value for them. They can, when you use applications for scanning, you usually have also history. So if you will search for applications, try maybe to find one such which gives you possibility to save history of scanned codes, because when tourists come back to their homes, they usually want to say to their family, to colleagues, to friends, what they have seen, and if they have QR codes history, they can talk a lot about everything that they have seen. Okay, they can visit again those websites. They can read again the description of one historical building or something like that. So the potential is big, and as your colleague said, I didn't know that everything how many things are possible. So it depends mainly on how good you are in inventing things. Okay, so if you can find one good solution, and the important thing is that you want to give information to your visitors. If you give them something that is not information for them, because we know that if I tell you something that you already know, it has no value for you. But if I tell you something that you don't know and expect, then it is very important to get such information.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. We have another question from a colleague in our department.
Yes, can I speak?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
Yes, Professor Sasha, thank you very much for the very beneficial information. It was very helpful. Actually, I was in Slovenia and I have never noticed any kind of QR codes, as I was in Portorož and in Ljubljana. So my question is, where do you use QR codes for tourists? I mean, I have never noticed it. This is the first question. For what purposes or for which tourist attractions are you using them? And my second question is that, what is your idea? How can they be more interesting for tourists? I mean, how do you plan to make them to be more interesting?
Thank you for your question. The first part I heard quite well. The second, I will ask you to maybe repeat one part. The answer to the first part is that in Slovenia, you will mostly find not very good examples of using QR codes, or you will also not find them at all. So the examples which I show you about Tartini are possible to see here, so they are here, but they are not always used in a very meaningful way. Okay, so Slovenia, as a general, I would say it is not maybe the good example of good practice, and maybe also other surrounding countries. So if you want to see really a lot of QR codes, you have to go to the Asia. Okay, in China, in Japan, they have QR codes everywhere. They also have so-called, for example, virtual stores. So in front of one building, you have some, I will show you some pictures from Google. Just a second. So they don't go to the store and buy things, but just scan QR codes, like in this case. I hope it will open on big. No, that was not good example. I hope you can see it. Yeah.
I guess you should upload it first.
Uh,
You don't see anything,
yeah.
Saša.
Sorry. Yeah, I have to share screen. Yes, thank you. I will show you now. You can see a lot of pictures of such virtual stores now. Okay, so these are not put in front of real stores. It could be in a subway or somewhere else. So people, when they're going back to home, while waiting for the train, they scan QR codes, they order what they need, and then when they come home, it could be already that all these things are already waiting in front of home. Okay, so if you want to feel this, you have to go to Asia. And for the second question, I'm not sure what you asked me. So could you repeat shortly?
Yes, of course. You said that tourists would like to use QR codes if they knew how to use it, and if it was like something that they would enjoy to use it, if it
Yes.
was interesting for them. So, what do you suggest? How can we make it more interesting, or how can we make it more attractive for tourists?
Yeah, thank you very much. There are several possibilities. The first one was to make good content in QR codes. The second one is to create QR codes which looks nice. The third one is put them on some materials which are already nice to see. Nice brochures, nice t-shirt which you give to tourists, to such products which are already interesting for tourists. And the one thing which is also important among all other is to teach tourists. So if you see that tourists are there in your hotel or in your tourism information center, and they are seeking for information, if there is crowded, and if you can help somebody that he or she will use QR codes, and to give them just a little hint how to do it, they will do it, and you will have time for others to teach others or something like that. It's the same as in the library. For example, we can send our students to the library, and then librarian can help to every student, okay? But it is better if you teach students how to use online bibliographic system to find a book which is in our library, and that they will come into the library and they will not need librarian, and they will go to the I'm not sure how to where books are, and they will take it out. Okay, so I think it is very important to teach tourists, and in first place also your employee. Okay, that if they will know how to get as much as possible out of, for example, QR codes, they will also help tourists. But for sure, QR codes are only one part of very big story. So this is only a niche thing, but you can serve the information to tourists in many, many other ways, which can be more or less connected with ICT, communication technology. So if you want, you can have only books, but in the other way, you can have NFC chips or some radio beacons which you can put on some attractions, and when people will pass, tourists will pass them, and if they will have a Bluetooth turned on, they will get push notifications to their mobile phones. So there are a lot of possibilities. So QR codes are only one thing, and I don't want to say that they are the most how to say it, that this is the most important thing and that you should only focus on QR codes. It is one thing which you have to think about, but it is, of course, only one of many possibilities.
Okay, thank you very much. My regards to Porto Roche and Slovenia. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more quick question.
Okay.
If there's any. It's almost time.
Meanwhile, I will see if I have some other picture maybe here, which can be interesting. For example, here we have one example of using QR codes in museums. Very, very good way because you can find details about any exponent in that museum, and you take all those descriptions with you on your phone. And let me see. This is one example of a so-called Wikipedia town. It is called Mount Media, something like that, Mountpedia, and they have QR codes everywhere in the town, and they call this QRpedia, I think. So you have such QR codes around, you scan them, and you are redirected to one Wikipedia page, which is meant for tourists to see all the details about the tourist attractions. So very good example, okay? And maybe this one is maybe less good example because we can see one QR code which is very much on the influence of bad weather, okay? So I'm not sure how long such QR code will be possible to scan because it is quite on the open space, okay? So maybe this for the end, few examples and comment on them.
Saša, thank you. They were definitely good examples. It seems there are no other questions, and I'm closing the session. Thank you again and again. It was super interesting. I personally have learned a lot about the use of QR codes.
Okay, I can say only that I'm very thankful for this opportunity to discuss with you, to make a connection. And I hope that in normal times, not COVID times, that we will have an opportunity to again make exchanges and to see each other also in real.
Hopefully, likewise, and thank you.
Yeah.
I just wish to meet you in person when the circumstances change. Saša, thank you for being with us. On behalf of my colleagues and students, I thank you a lot, for this nice presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you have a good day, all of you.
Yeah. To you also.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.